Hello everybody, welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I am your host Stefan Leitinger, and with me today is Mr. Josh Mcilroy. So first of all, thank you so much for being here, brother, and tell the listeners who is Josh Mcilroy and what has he been up to in the world of dodgeball.
Yeah, so I suppose first of all, thanks for having me, Stefan. I was pleased whenever you reached out, actually. Just looking forward to having the conversation here. I've been playing dodgeball since 2013. I joined through university, so I played for Queen's University Belfast and then formed a club, Ballyhagamore Barbarians, with a group from that Queen's school. So that's sort of been the club scene. It's been kind of growing over the last number of years whenever we've been with Ballyhagamore. Also been very privileged then to be able to play for Northern Ireland Knights and be the men's coach. And really, I've been the captain as well for probably 9 years now. So probably 2 years after I first joined. So, got to have many good experiences and heartbreaks as well. But no, it's been an absolute blast, and I would highly recommend the sport to anyone.
Awesome, man. I mean, now I've looked into it a little bit today because I was sort of checking your history and the history of Northern Ireland. And the thing is, it's pretty similar to Austria because you guys started in 2010, I think, was the first time when you went to Euros. But we both went to our first Euros at Chester, I think, right?
Well, no, I came after Chester. Chester.
Okay.
That was the...
Okay, I thought... So you started in 2014 in Austria or in Belfast for the first time?
Austria was my first tournament.
Okay. Because I think I also looked up the results, and like when we started, we were like almost every year next to each other. So at the beginning, you were always one spot ahead of us, and then we switched a few times. And I think there is only one Worlds in Italy, I think, in Lignano, where you guys came fifth and we came second. And that was the only time before, obviously, when you won your first men's European Championships. I think that was the only other time that we weren't next to each other in the rankings, which is really fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because thinking back to Austria, which was the first Austrian Euros, was fantastic. So for someone who had never been to Euros, I walked in and sort of thought, flip, is this what dodgeball is all about? I still remember watching the first, because you did it where the hosts played the first game.
Yeah.
And I can still remember, the nerves watching that game in the crowd. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to go out there and play with all these guys who are phenomenal. And that was 3-ball back then, and we played yous. Luckily, we had Murphy at that point who played amazing. He had a really good tournament. I was awful. It's still the worst tournament I've ever been involved in. I could barely grip the ball. But the whole experience, and the culture of dodgeball, that's probably what really sealed the deal for me in terms of, I'm going to commit everything to this because it was such a good tournament. Who do you call the Austrian? He used to play in the centre. He was at the last Worlds there. He doesn't play anymore, but
Robin Oberhauser.
Yes. He had a brilliant game, and that was the one that really stood out to me in that first sort of host match. It was really, really good. And then, as you say, over the years we've had our fair share of battles, and we've always been in and around each other. Probably 3-ball for the 1 year we played against each other. We came out on top, and then we think we played you again in France later on in 3-ball. I think that's where you got your first medal, was it?
Exactly, yeah. That was for the bronze medal, and that was actually the first time our men's team won a medal and entered the podium. And that was, I can really still remember that game against you guys when we played you. That was like our first big highlight and my personal first really big highlight in the sport. Because the funny thing is, I started in 2013 in Chester, and it was like a little bit the other way around because we just got invited to it. Before that, we just played fun tournaments, so we had no idea what dodgeball was. We haven't seen the balls before, and it was like we just came there and didn't know what to expect at all. And then we came there, and it was like a really old school hall, and they were just building the seats with, I don't know, out of what, out of wood apparently, and just nailing them together when we came there, and we were like, "What is this?" But we had no idea, and then we started to play, and we obviously didn't have any clue how to play dodgeball. We just blindfolded our way throughout the first, I think, 5 games. And the funny thing is, I remember it as not winning a game at all. That's how I remember it. But apparently we came sixth, which is
Okay.
really interesting. So we beat like apparently France and Romania back then, and Sweden were behind us. And obviously like England, Scotland, you guys, and
Wales, maybe.
Wales back
Mm.
then, maybe Italy or
Yeah,
someone
I
was.
think Italy
Yeah,
were quite strong then. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it was like our first experience was from our side so unprofessional that, and like the whole area was also at the beginning seemed quite unprofessional to us as well. But then we got into the games and we were like really watching other nations taking this game really serious, and we were like, wow, this is quite amazing. And so I can still remember like when we decided to take the Euros to Austria, not me personally, but back then like Nicola, Max, and
Hmm.
Dani decided to bring it to Austria and try to push it to the next level on a professional organization side. And I think that was a really big step for the whole European dodgeball world, basically. And but it was really funny because we had no idea whatsoever, and then we just tried to push it, which has basically been the story from then on out. And like from a playing perspective, we still were nowhere, and that is funny to look back on it now. In Austria, I couldn't play because I injured myself 1 week before that tournament, and so I can't remember. That was the first time I started to coach a little, but I
Ah,
honestly
okay.
much except for the game against England where we got beaten up really badly.
That's so funny because that makes so much sense. Because I can remember Flo playing. So
Yeah,
I suppose for the listeners, Flo is Stefan's brother, and I remember being really impressed with it how good Flo was. And I never really remember thinking I was sort of going, why did Stefan not stand out at that tournament? That obviously makes sense. And whenever you touch upon England, I sort of still I bring this up whenever we're talking to some of the junior ones who are sort of coming through in dodgeball and sort of the really newbies because you'd see them quite a lot in the NI League. But we lined up to play that England team, and our captain at the time just said, "Look, boys, doesn't matter what we do, we're going to get absolutely smashed. So just have fun." And within 2 minutes, he was rolling around the court, like just rolling. I remember sort of standing around thinking, "Flip, like is this really how we're gonna like kind of try to play and perform?" And it just shows you, that obviously we tried, and well, quite a few of us were trying. Quite a few of us, I think, were just had kind of accepted that we were going to get pretty beat. But from then on, I think from that moment, it's kind of been like, no, okay, actually, there's a really good sport here. Commentary and all in the background. Family had the chance to watch it. That was the kind of thing where you kind of went, right,
yeah,
no, I want to be
yeah.
playing here at a good level and
That
sort of
really
doing your country
sort of
proud in a
hits
way.
home because basically that's the same way I think most of us started. Obviously, England didn't because they basically started as the best and
Hmm.
stayed at the top for a long time, and the other nations sort of had to just play catch up for a long time. And I think that leads me into my next question to you, which is like, for us, the whole experience and everything really changed when the ball changed, basically when we switched from 3 balls to 5 balls. And I can remember the game in France where we were like playing for the third place, but it was always England and Scotland, and then a few of us, and then the rest, basically. And England
Hmm.
and Scotland were untouchable in 3 ball dodgeball. And I can remember it was like the balls were big, it was hard to throw them, and it was really fun for us still because it was throwing balls at people, which is always fun. And you guys were just better at catching them, and so it was really frustrating for us who could only throw. But when you looked at the three ball game on the top level with England and Scotland, it also looked really professional and really amazing. And we were always like, we just want to win one set. That was for so long. That was our whole like motivation for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
obviously after France, we switched to five balls, and it was sort of a new start for all the nations. And I think also for you guys, that was when you guys switched to the next level.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I can still remember having that debate, around three ball or five ball. And probably at the time being in the camp of no three ball. Three ball is where it's at. And now, I would look at you in disgust if you said, let's pick up a three ball and let's play a couple of games here and we'll be rolling the ball across the court to each other. Like five ball certainly it's such a step, and it was such a difference. I think we found out quite a decent build up before the World Cup. Yeah, okay, we're moving to five ball. We had a couple of sort of local tournaments. Tried to start to learn kind of what the rules were going to be. Went to Manchester, and I still remember we were training a really aggressive style, and it was kind of a look. If you have a ball in your hands, just hit someone. Doesn't matter if you get hit, as long as you hit someone when you leave the court, that's a success. And then we got to Manchester and they did the referee meeting. And I remember our coach at the time pulling us all aside and saying, okay, there's a rule around 5 seconds, and you have 5 seconds to release the majority. And then all of a sudden, that game plan was just out the window. It didn't make any sense because all of a sudden we were giving away four all the time. And yeah, it's funny how the smallest little rule change can have just such an impact.
Funny, because I really can't remember that. But in Manchester, we didn't play the World Cup. We played the Invitational with the men's, and that was a whole nother story. But
Yes.
still, yeah, at the moment, at the beginning, we were all really skeptical. We were like, "What is this? This is pure chaos. You can't catch those balls. Obviously, you can throw them, which was fun, but it was like such an
Hmm.
unstructured, chaotic game, and we were like, "What's happening here?" And it took a little bit of
Yeah.
convincing because there were lots of voices against the five ball format, especially from the women as well, because the men were like, oh great, we get more balls to throw, and the women were like, we don't want men to throw at us with those small balls. But I think it took like a
Hmm.
month, and afterwards you couldn't go back anymore. It was like if you made that transition, it was just excruciating to go back to three big balls. So that's really funny, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was something about getting it. There was something about getting a taste for the throwing pace. Like all of a sudden, you went from throwing a ball at whatever you were throwing at 55 miles an hour, and you're picking up the small ball and throwing it at 65. You just felt that the sport was just so much more intense. You had less time to decide what you were going to do. The decision making became more sort of important in a way. It became about less.
Yeah,
It also, I think, became more of a team sport at that point, even though it was before everyone sort of started to dial in the tactics. Three ball, when I started, was very much just give the ball to the best player and get them to try to do something with it, be it post throws, pre throws, catches, and everyone else just be looking for catches. And then if you go down, start rolling the ball, put the pressure on the other team, or if you had a big thrower, you could take it on. But more often than not, the amount of catches that were made in last man because the ball pace was just too slow, ultimately.
yeah,
So I was really impressed then whenever you moved to five ball, the throwing pace picked up, but also the catching really didn't drop off. It
yeah.
actually just improves the level and showcases the level of athletes that play dodgeball. Just how good they are at catching.
Yeah, so true. Because the thing was, like with the big balls, obviously, like England caught us all the time. But the thing was, we couldn't put them in places where you couldn't catch them. And if you,
Uh huh.
the final England versus Scotland, it was just toe shot after toe shot. Like they were so precise with their throws, and it was really
Mm-hmm.
impressive. But that was basically the whole point of the game. Just try to hit someone with the slightest margin and don't put it anywhere you can catch it, and do pre-throws and counters basically. And afterwards start rolling the ball over and try to go for catches. So it was fun, and if you watch it back now, it's weird, but it's not slow. It has a sort of different athleticism around it, but as you said, it's more of a single player sport. and it's a whole different dynamic, and it's way less complex. It's just the complexity and the tactics are just like easily where you reach it, and then that's it basically.
Yeah, definitely.
From that, we're gonna go right into the World Cup, I think. So just give us a little um, insight into how you came. Obviously, you came from Osijek, from the European Championships, and you dominated in the men's division. You beat us, you beat England, so you definitely felt quite confident at that point, and you have been defending champion for 2 years now. So basically, you knew you were the best team going into this competition, and sort of that was a little bit of a change for you guys, because obviously you won the year before, but before that you were always like the runners up, the underdogs, always fighting for the top spots but never really getting there. You beat England a few times before and really got um, under their armor a little bit, but still you've never been the dominator, and now you were definitely the favorite for everyone else as well. So how did your preparation and how did your mindset differ from the years before going into that World Cup?
Yeah, I suppose going into the World Cup, probably in a bit of a long-winded answer, it probably all started from the last World Cup in Madison Square Gardens whenever we beat England for the first time. I think that really flipped the switch in us to where we sort of probably, whenever you looked around the team, you started to realize, right, we can perform at this level, we can beat the best, because you guys won in that World Cup, and obviously that would have been a big game as well. But in the years in the lead up to that, England were the favourite and had won previous World Cups. So whenever we beat them, we were kind of going, right, no, look, this is proof that we can do this. And then over the next couple of years, you're right, we sort of we get close. We maybe would beat England again. We knew that there was clearly the quality, and it kind of just reaffirms. You get this little bit of you build momentum, in that regard. And then it kind of, before COVID, we played you guys. We'd been to a European final before. We'd lost against England in that European final. We played you. We were thinking this is the year, and you beat us pretty handily whenever we watch it back. And then COVID hits, and we were sort of thinking momentum was gone. And there was a point then we got into the coaches meeting, sort of Sean and myself, and we'd had a good chat at that point. And sort of, I think everyone was probably thinking the same thing. Whenever you're locked up in COVID, you're bubbling, thinking about all the other times. And we used that time to sort of analyze and consider where we wanted to go. And then, we just went really, really hard at the training. We decided, look, we're going to really commit to this, and we trained our asses off in the lead up to the first Euros. Got the win in that, and that was sort of the moment of, right, we've done it. That was almost like a weight off the shoulders, to be honest with you, because we've been so close, as you said, for so long, and you don't want to get this reputation or start to build a mentality around we get there, but we don't quite get that the final little bit that we need to do to come out on top as champions. So I felt relief whenever we won that Euros, and then whenever we fast forward then to Croatia, it's exactly as you said. The focus was almost, okay, can we go again? Can I? A lot of guys, it's not professional sport, so can I get these guys to commit to the same amount of training? Can everyone stay fit? Can we sort of gel as well? We won't be the sort of I'll say crowd favourites, because we would have felt at times, people wanted NI to win because they hadn't. They just didn't want to see the same people winning. So I was conscious, look, that might change a little bit. All of a sudden, it might be, okay, no, we want to see another nation who haven't had their moment in the sun yet. So I sort of felt going into that tournament, it was going to be even harder. And that Netherlands tournament, or sorry, the Croatia tournament, we just smashed it. We were so in sync, and the rub of the green, everything paid off for us. Every ball that went up in the air, we were able to catch. Every 4-ball play, we just executed so well. It would have been so difficult to play against. So I was probably a bit shocked at how that tournament went. And whenever we played you guys in the final, I pulled my hamstring in the bronze place in the mixed. I didn't get to play in the mixed. So I sort of felt I missed out on playing you guys. And I was thinking, this is going to be tough to play Austria here in the final. That they got the win. It was still a tight game, but probably you guys would have had more to give, or would have felt like you had more to give in that. Probably wanted it to be closer than it was. So going into the World Cup, the latest World Cup in Austria, we were feeling pretty confident, and it was very much about get to the big games in terms of let's get to an England and Austria, USA, even the Swedens, the Italys, the guys who've been there for a long time. Let's get through all the sort of potential hazards and slip ups, because there's so many. Once you look at that World Cup, they release the team sheets. You're thinking, you could really slip up at any point here, and that could cost you your full tournament. Once you get into round 16, quarterfinal stage, we almost did against Australia, because they just played a different style against us, and they were so good and on it, and we let a couple of mistakes creep in, and that game could have went away from us. So our sort of dynamic and team talks were very much about let's just keep going, next game, and let's get to Austria, because we kind of felt like at some point we knew we would play you guys. So very much our preparation and focus was on Austria. And then once we kind of seen the bit of the race that started to develop, I guess, between you and England, and we realised that we had Puerto Rico in the group, and there was a bit of an unknown there. So we didn't really know how many points we were going to be able to get, and obviously the main focus was just trying to get a win. So we just had to try to think, right, let's get through the group here. Let's not worry about them. We'll play whoever and we'll beat whoever. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting, because I think it was a little bit. We came just a little bit before you when we peaked, sort of. So we won at Madison Square Garden in the men's, and that was sort of really unexpected for us as well. So it was a weird tournament. It was so many games in so little time. The balls were different, which really, I think, played to our advantage, because they were so bouncy and you couldn't catch them really. And our game at that point was just so throw heavy. And so since the other nations really didn't adapt to it and still tried to catch it, and I think that was also a point in the game for bronze with you guys, where England just tried to catch every ball and it just slipped out of their hands because the ball was just so slippery. And we won that tournament and beating Malaysia and not England in the final. And that was absolutely incredible. And it was just for us, it came not out of nowhere. We've been training for this for a long time and really slowly creeping upwards. But still, we just it just was our tournament. We felt like, and shortly after that, the European Championships in Lignano were sort of, I think, 2 months or something later. And then we played England again and we lost again to them. So we kind of got pulled down to reality quite fast after that. So we were still world champions, and that was awesome. And then COVID hit and we were world champions for a long time. But I think the way you described you felt after Drachten was basically the way it felt for us after Newcastle, where we really tried. After the World Cup, we were like, okay, we're at the top. And then Italy came and we're like, okay, we're still not there yet. And we got together and we're like, okay, we know that we can win now, but we know we have to improve a lot. And so we got together and really, for the first time, I feel like got way deeper into the tactics. Our training improved so much. We just were much more professional and proficient at it as well. And I think at Newcastle, no one was expecting us to be as good as we were, and we like figured something out in dodgeball that the other nations hadn't. Like sort of the tactical end game wasn't there yet, because England didn't need it because they beat anyone anyway, so they never developed that. And you sort of did, but not to that level yet. And I think that whole tournament we didn't lose one single game, and the finals against you guys were pretty close actually when it comes to sets. But the thing was, we could finish sets for the first time, and that was the difference. When you see the semi-final, you guys against England, where England was up pretty much every set and you turned pretty much every set against them, and that was like that was what I sort of saw 1 year before that in Italy, and was like, okay, we need to figure this one out, because that's what happens to everyone against England. You can play a 6-6, you can play a 4-4 against them, but you can't beat their last two guys. And the same with your last two guys. And for England, that was also, I think, the turning point where you decided and you started to really get more tactical and get more of a team play mindset to the game, where you overrun them. And back then it was a real upset, and we still got you because you didn't know us that well, you didn't expect our style, we just learned how to finish games. So it was quite close, but in the end it wasn't, sort of. And then we felt like we were up at the top. We beat everyone. We beat everything. We won everything in England, which was just the cherry on top, I guess. And yeah, then COVID hit, and I think that was for our whole community, and I think for the whole world, obviously. And for dodgeball, it was just such a break at the time where it felt like it, it just started to find its pace, basically. And obviously, then Drachten came around. Everyone didn't know what the other teams did for the last 2 years, sort of 3 years, maybe. And we were just physically not there. We were just the men's team was still very heavy from COVID. And we played you guys in the mixed and in the men's, and we played England, and you guys just crushed us. And we felt so put back to our place and felt so out of place, and it didn't feel like the way it felt 3 years ago. And we knew we still had the technical abilities, but we weren't there from a mindset standpoint, and physically we weren't there at all. So,
Probably a little bit of depth actually as well, Stefan. Just from a, I always remember because you'd injured your finger, didn't you? You dislocated that at the tournament, and I remember thinking, who comes in? Where's the depth coming from? And that's something we've historically always struggled with is sort of a core 6 to 8 players that are kind of on the squad, and I think that's dodgeball's moved away from that now. You can't play with 6 to 7 to 8 players and relying on those guys. You need depth now.
yeah, absolutely. That's an absolute valid point, and that hits the nail on the head, because the thing was, I basically had to play every game from the quarterfinal on for 40 minutes, and we didn't
Uh-huh.
have anyone to swap me. And basically, in the semifinals against England, I think I dislocated my finger in the fourth set or something, and I just went out, iced it, taped it up, and went back in. And still, it wasn't enough, not even close. They just smashed us. And I feel like the game was so dependent and relying on me to give it structure that I couldn't play at all. I was so handicapped by that, and if I was out, the game was done, because the whole tactics we learned for 2019 were just gone through COVID. And so for the World Cup, we had like 6 weeks. I had a big ring finger that just kept on swelling, and my doctors say I should cast it for 8 weeks, and I was like, not gonna happen. And so we trained twice a week and really got together and said, we gotta fix this, because this is not the way we want to play this. And obviously at the World Cup, we sort of fixed it. We were in better physical shape. We were tactically somewhat back to where we were in 2019. And obviously, because the home nations weren't at the World Cup, and so the depth wasn't there, it was a way easier tournament than even Euros. I mean, we also had our struggles against Australia, I think, in the quarterfinals, because they're maniacs. They're so fast, they're so motivated. They play over 100% the whole time, and they just don't go away. And we're like struggling and struggling. So I really felt for you guys, because I've been there, and I think that's going to be something we're going to have to look out in the future as well, because Australia is looking really, really sharp in dodgeball at the
Yeah, that they were maniacs. They were so happy to throw a ball away at any moment, but also they gave catches away at times at sloppy moments. But there were some times they were getting hits that I was thinking nobody else in Europe would have thrown that ball, but
no.
Australia were finding the way, and they were so aggressive on the front foot whenever you came
Yeah,
to make your initial throw that you just trying to snap back was so difficult. Yeah,
yeah.
no, they're an interesting team. Definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're just pure commitment, everyone. To catches, to throws. They haven't got their tactics up to our standards, but they don't have like the competition and they're really trying to fix that. And if they do, ooh, that's gonna be a tough one. Definitely.
Definitely.
One to look out for. But yeah, and after that, 1 year later, Osijek, Croatia, the Euros were, and we're like, okay, we got together again as a men's team and said, okay, we want to do this right. We got everyone together, asked everyone if they're still into it and if they want to do something. And we knew we had to change some things in order to be competitive again. And we sort of got there. To Croatia, I felt we had a much better squad depth. We had much better balance. The tactics were there. And in the mixed, obviously, we won pretty close, but we did. And in the men's, we felt we were really up there with you guys, but it just, you guys were just way tighter. Like I always say, there was no air in between anyone with you guys. There was just one unit, one fist, and we were still sort of six fingers that sort of played together, were better than everyone else, but had no chance against you guys. And but it was a really big step back in the right direction. And we felt like we knew from there on what we had to improve to be competitive again. And so from that point on, we like focused completely. We knew it's going to be our home World Cup, and the only team we were basically preparing for was you guys, because we thought we couldn't really prepare for England because England has just such a depth, and you don't know which player they're going to play, and you know individually they probably are going to be better than you, but
Hmm.
as a team they probably aren't. So if we beat you guys, then we were really confident this time that we could fight our way against England as well. So we thought like of you guys being maybe individually even to England, maybe not with like the top 10, but with the top six, definitely. But you guys were just much tighter and your tactics were just much cleaner and your commitment, your aggression was there, such as with England, but you were just much more controlled as well. And our strength is the control and not so much the pure aggression. But our weakness was always that the game was really reliant on one or two people. And so we focused 1 year basically to get the whole squad up to the level tactically so that it didn't matter who was in there and that we had more than six players. And then 1 month before Worlds, my brother tore his ACL in a friendly playing against me. And that was sort of that it felt like the end for a while there because he had the best season. He was definitely maybe even our best player at that moment. He was my wing buddy on the other side. And
I personally thought he was the best player in the mixed in the year before in Croatia. I thought he was fantastic, and he added
absolutely,
such a different dimension to your team. Yeah.
absolutely. So he's like the aggressive part of us too. So I can give him all the space, and he's sort of a loose gun, but he has so much skill and quality and so much aggression that if he has someone who's got his back and protects him a little bit more, then it's just the most annoying thing to play against. And
Hmm.
he had the best season. We won everything. He played everything. He was in shape. We felt unbeatable throughout the whole season. And when he got injured, it was like I can still feel that was such a tough loss. And yeah, it was basically we for a while there we were like, okay, fuck, that's maybe it. But then we had our training camp and we really pushed the guys, and he as well like took his part as a coach and tried to push the guys to get their level up and try to fill his spot. And we had lots of variations, lots of different players who could fill that spot, who couldn't fill his position but who could do part of it. And the great thing this time around was that Basti, who's our third sort of the third player of that trio or quattro with Andy as well, who hasn't been fit for any international tournament for 6 years now. And we knew from a club level we play every week. We are basically the three best players in Austria, and we play the whole season together. So it's sort of like you, Adam, Johnny, and Smurf. So basically that's the way I look at it. So we play in the club together, we play in the national team together, and yeah, since Flo found his spot in the coaching box, and Basti could step up, and Andy could show everyone that he still got it. And so we had to switch it around, but I think that was basically also one thing that was the reason for our success this year, that the game wasn't reliant on one person and wasn't relying on me that much. And that
Mm-hmm.
even though I
Mm-hmm.
had to play since the semifinal, I basically played every second of the game, but I could play way more aggressive than in the years before. So I was out more as well, so I could take more rest in between. So it was sustainable
Yes.
for me at that level, and there was enough of a competitive level and a mind for the tactics in our team that it didn't feel like any drop off, and it was just different. And I think that was also something that teams like you guys struggled against, because before it was, if you got me out, the game was different and you could control it. And now you had someone who you didn't see on this spot before because he didn't play there, and it was just something different on a different level. And that was, I think, really the point where we were successive this year around.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. I suppose, firstly, if Flo is listening, I hope he recovers quickly and he has no issues with it, because that can be a tough one to come back from. So yeah, hopefully see him in the future playing some really good stuff. Just hopefully not against us. And it was great to see Basti playing as well, because yeah, been close with Basti over the last number of years, and he's a really nice guy. So he deserved a moment there to get out and show everyone what he could do. So I was really pleased for him on a personal level. But yeah, I suppose that probably sums up from an outsider perspective. Looking in at Austria, that would be some of the key points I would have raised at our sort of bit of a debrief after with the guys. You guys look really good, clearly developed, much more depth than you had before. And certainly as you're playing with a little bit more kind of freedom between you. The from NI's perspective, and I suppose going into the match a little bit, um, it's easily my biggest disappointment in sport. So we kind of we knew the pressure was with us. We knew the game was never done. We knew any game was a potential trip up. We had tight matches against Mexico, and previously the year before Spain in the Euros. So there's teams there, and everyone's improving so much. You can really see that coming through. So once we got to use, we were thinking, brilliant. This is the game to go for. But I suppose ultimately sport's all about disappointment whenever you look at it from a high level perspective. And if you're good enough and if you're lucky enough, you get to see, or experience some moments of true high, uh, which you'd never forget. But in this case, it was a really low moment. I think looking back at the match, it starts off. I'm sure you've watched it back. I'm sure you have.
Once or twice.
But I would say the first four sets, I think three of them, you could make the argument that we should win. The first set is 5-2, and we have four balls. And you guys, we make a poor call, we don't run the play as we should, and you end up getting four balls and you snatch it with both hands and you just get back into that game. And this is not taking away anything from Austria, because Austria deserved to be the treble champions. They were head and shoulders above everyone at the tournament. But I was in the coaching box because I chipped a bone in my finger, so I was kind of trying to think about strategy and substitutions. Second set, that one gets tight where it was 2v2, and I think actually if you watch back the footage, one of I can't remember which Austrian player it is, but he makes a mistake where on a two ball release he probably overexposes himself, and it's Adam and Murphy, and they press the court really aggressive, and there's a chance to get one ball off and have the opposite player holding to mark the opposite player on the Austrian side who has a ball still. So Murphy makes the hit, but Adam follows the hit as well, and that created this moment then where essentially Adam was dead, because Schmidt was then marking Adam. So he takes Adam out, brings it to 1v1, when really it should have been 2v1 potentially. There's a lot of if buts and maybes. And then Schmidt goes and wins a 1v1 versus Murphy, which I have to say, you don't see it too often. So hats off to him. But at that point, then you're 2 sets down, and I'm starting to think, right, well, should we be making subs? But in my eyes, I was thinking we should have won those 2 sets. So I think it's okay. The third set, used one comfortably. It was a good set again, and then the fourth set I think goes to 6-4, where we make a couple of good hits, and then that's when you make your fallback catch on Adam after you've kind of given him the sign that you want to hear. And look, Adam is phenomenal. He had an off day for his level. Um, I'm sure he'll always think back to your wee smiling face on the floor falling back. But like that catch, then 4 sets. That's where we lost the game. The first half created such a hill for us to go up. We looked flat, a little bit like the last time we played you guys in the World Cup in the US. You came out so hot. You took your moments well when we made a mistake, and you really punished us for it. And that ended up, what was it, halftime to 11-3, something like that. So those sets go another way. It's a tight game, but that made it a really difficult choice from a coaching side of things, because I did feel like the game was more competitive than the scoreline showed. But ultimately, I thought you guys dodged really well. Throwing power had increased. Andy was hitting through balls all the time. He was hitting through blockers, which probably we probably weren't necessarily set out to expect Andy to attack a ball player at all times. Not all times, but to attack a ball player quite frequently. So that was, yeah, we probably failed to adapt a little bit in the moment. And all tournament compared to Croatia, where we were fantastic with 4 balls, all tournament we were really poor at the World Cup with 4, which is frustrating because we drilled it so often. But that just shows you the pressure that comes with playing, essentially an elite sport. Other teams put you under pressure, and you fail to execute, and then that's unfortunately the way it goes. But you guys, I think we made maybe 2 catches, maybe, through the whole game, and I think they were both Kelv, who in theory isn't our catcher. So that to me screams that you boys did your homework, and you just executed really, really well.
Yeah, yeah, I think I would summarize it pretty much the same way as well. I mean, it was really like the first sets, as you said, were really just, I think it was our day, because the first set you have to win that, obviously. And I don't know what went wrong in this call, because we have 1 ball, you have 4 balls, and it's like the one thing I always preach to my players in the men's: you never give your opponent, even if it's just 1 and you're up against 6, you never give him 5 balls. That's just something. Do anything, but don't do that.
Yeah, yeah,
Every one of my teams knows that this is unacceptable. And basically, you threw 4 balls at me. They went 1 centimeter around me, like if you were throwing knives at me. And that was just a bit of luck there.
it's
And
just the
then we
opening that you
turned it
needed.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And then we turned it around, and that was obviously a big momentum builder. So we were out of the first set. We knew it would be a grind against you guys, and that you wouldn't give us easy chances, and you didn't. But you made one little mistake, and we came back from that, and that was, for our confidence, that was immense, because we knew you made mistakes, and we really drilled to limit our mistakes. And we knew from the Aussie game as well, we knew there were mistakes in your game, but you were so tight and so committed that you always were one step ahead of us. And we really drilled for those mistakes. And after the first 2 sets, we were like, okay, they're touchable. And we were there, we were pumped. We have prepared for exactly that match. We didn't want to have it in the semifinals, but we had to. And so we were just, okay, this is our final, this is everything. And I think, as you said, like those little mistakes, like I had those days Adam had, and where you like, he knows what his job is, and sometimes it's just not your day, and you make tiny mistakes that at other days you're probably gonna get away with. And in this case, the world is out to punish you. And obviously, I was really prepared for that catch. I've tried it like the year before as well. I've always envisioned that catch against Adam. And I think in the final last year, I did it in the first set, and it was like, I'm going to throw, he's going to throw at me, I'm going to tombstone catch it. And I've prepared that move for a whole year, basically
I was
for
going to say
Adam.
we've seen the Instagram highlights all year of you doing the move.
Yeah, that's I didn't know how to catch, and I found a way where I'm quite good at it, and it quite perfectly fits into my style of playing. So I know if I throw, I'm open, and opponents try to punish me, and that is like a really good counter to that. So I found that for myself and really practice it a lot. And obviously, Adam in the first part, he should never take that throw, and he knows that. And I think 9 out of 10 times he doesn't throw that ball, and if he does, he's gonna throw it somewhere else. But those are the little mistakes you make, and those mistakes just add
Yeah.
up. And I think that was the whole thing throughout the whole game. We were like a little sharper, and we didn't give you easy things, and you just gave a little bit away, and we took it. And then obviously, then the momentum came in where we were like up by such big amount that it was at some point it didn't feel over till I think 3 minutes before the end. I still played, I think, till the last two sets or something, which in hindsight I don't know why, but in the moment it still felt like at any time this
Yeah,
could
yeah.
go the other way. And it
Uh-huh.
was then
Uh-huh. I think
obviously, from my point of view, that was the best game we as Austria have ever played. It was probably one of my best games as well. And we were just really prepared for that. And everything sort of played into our hands. And it wasn't your best day. And that just added up because I think it
yeah.
was a really close game, and it was a close game in the beginning. It just ran away, and the momentum always seemed to shift in our direction. So, and those are, as you said, uphill battles, and some days it just feels like this in dodgeball.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Some days it just doesn't go for you, but certainly momentum in dodgeball is something that is so key, and it's difficult to create it, but once it's there, it's so hard to break it. You know, um, the first that first set as an example, we of the first three throws we hit all three, and that's a example of okay, well if that goes on and we win the set, all of a sudden you guys might be thinking, oh well, flip it, they've turned up here, they've hit us every time, we're not dodging well enough. A wee bit of internal doubt starts to creep in. We let the lead slip, and all of a sudden it's us thinking, flip, we should be one up here, and now all of a sudden these guys we've left the door open for them. They get two. Okay, well, that was a tight one. We maybe could have had it, and then the momentum just starts to creep up. A ball gets ricocheted, goes up in the air. You know, you guys maybe make a catch, and we try to make a cover throw and miss it, and you can feel it on a dodgeball court. When a game is going well for you, and for you guys, it looked like you wouldn't make a mistake. Didn't look like it. Just looked like your time.
yeah, I mean that was obviously a really tough loss for you guys. But what I wanted to talk to you as well was afterwards. You that was basically probably the hardest thing, or the toughest thing about this whole tournament. That if you lost the semifinal, you had to go into the third place playoff the same day, and you played us, and then you played England in the mix as well. And obviously there was a super close game, and you lost that one as well. So basically, two really, probably a little bit unexpected and absolutely tough losses. And then you have to go regroup and play two games for the third place, which is still a big game. But at that point, it just feels like I don't even I don't even care. Like when we won both semis, the most joy I had that was that I didn't have to play anymore. I was done with it. After the game against you guys, I was like, okay, I'm fine. I'm done for this tournament basically.
Yeah,
But so talk me a little bit through the semi-final against England in the mix. What happened there, and then how it was to get back to playing England in the men's and really digging deep and coming out on top in that game.
yeah, yeah. So I think going into play England in the mix straight after, it was tough. Now I think at a high level again in mixed NI. So we haven't actually had the chance to really go and really beat an English mixed team, and England really are a phenomenal mixed team, obviously, and men's and women's as well. But they have a real strength in that mixed zone because they can call upon really really talented players, and they've got such a breadth of players they could pick. But we've never really had the chance to go and play against them and really showcase what we can do against them. So while we had confidence against the men, just based on history, I guess, not of we should beat these guys, because as you pointed out, quality for quality, player for player, the quality is probably the same. So we kind of felt like it was going to be a tough game. They obviously had just come off a loss as well. So I suppose for me, my focus then was trying to get the guys to shift the focus towards mixed, and that there was still a chance at a gold medal at this point. And a couple of the guys who played really well. Kelvin had a fantastic tournament. He was clearly up for it. But there's a couple other ones you were trying to pick up to make sure we were all sort of going into this and having no regrets. And that game was as tit for tat as it could have been. Like every set, it was either England or doing really really good stuff, being really clinical, not making mistakes, or it was us being really clinical, not making mistakes. There wasn't that many sets that really were nail biting down to the wire. It was kind of a right, we'll win this set, you guys can have the next set, we'll win this set. And again, as all dodgeball does, it came down to a couple of really key moments. And across the board, they've got fantastic players as well. So unfortunately, they managed to pip that and get it across the line with it was the final set it came down to. So then that was the tough point. So I think there was a few people. Adam had sort of had a cold over the week of the tournament, and that's not to make an excuse for Adam or anything like that, but he was dead on his feet. So come that game, third place, it kind of was there's no point in you playing these games. It was probably, looking back at it now, probably a coaching decision. I'm not involved in the mixed coaching setup, but for men's, we've got great quality that are developing in the background that could have come and played, just as well as anyone else in that team. So, we should have used that depth a little bit more to try to, as you said, give someone the chance to have a wee break, just to get back into the swing of things. So into we played men's first, wasn't it, Stefan? Can you remember?
Yeah,
you didn't play, so you probably remember.
It was men's first.
Men's first, yeah. So that was then going into play against England, who were kind of on a high from something, because they just beat us to go into the final in the mixed. So we had a real sour taste in our mouth going in there, and I suppose we mixed up the team a bit, and we got in some of the younger guys who just gave so much energy, and really thrived in between some of the more experienced heads. So I know Kareem had a fantastic game against Brett, watching it back, because Brett's one of the best dodgeballers that's ever played. But he struggled. He'd clearly been playing 2 games before, 2 high intensity games, because Kareem had a great day, and I'm sure he'll always remember that and be looking to do it in the future in a starting position, I'm sure. But they went with quite I would say probably a Meteors heavy team, in terms of, it was kind of Tamas and then quite a few of the Meteor representatives like Christofferson and Joe Brown and obviously Brett himself and the rest. So there was quite I would have said it would have been the England team that maybe you might have been expecting if you watch the English leagues a bit more. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what I think the team should be. But they went with a different lineup than they've played with us previously. So even that, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a different game. But luckily in that one, again, it was a really tight game. I think we probably have a little bit of a mental edge on them at the minute. When it gets tough and tight, I just think there's that little bit of pressure that builds, a little question mark in the back of the mind that says, oh, these guys have beat us a couple more times. Are they going to do it again? We've worked hard to get to where we are to be able to beat England on several occasions. So that's always a game we look to as that's the ultimate benchmark for us still, even after playing you guys. We want to beat you guys, but England were always the first team. That's the team that set dodgeball sort of to the level it is. So any win you can get against them, we've always been really proud of. Um, so that was a good game, and then into the mixed after that, we played again, trying to add in a little bit more squad depth, giving a nod to some of the guys who played fantastic throughout the tournament and probably didn't get the game time they deserved in that semi final against Hughes. But and same with the women, although they had went on to a final. That mixed against the US, it was just flat to start. To be honest, they came out, played really aggressive form of dodgeball. I think whenever, if you looked at how the day went, Kelvin was finding his mark a lot on a push throw and on a pre throw. Same with Kareem. So it kind of felt like if we release our ball, we'll make a hit. But against the US, they were sometimes releasing early. And then what would happen is the US guys were just so aggressive that they'd be happy to say, okay, you don't have a ball anymore. Bye bye, you're out. And they would smash them out. And the catches that Kelvin took all tournament just weren't sticking. Or, whoever it was that was on court as well, because I know Brew and a couple other guys that were on the court at times and Adam himself. So, they went through that moment where it was sort of okay, these US guys and girls, we're not just going to be able to throw a ball at them and hit them out and think, right, brilliant, we'll move on to the next, we'll take our bronze medal and go home. And they played some really, really good stuff. The only thing I would say is they played some slow stuff as well. Their style was just, they walk up the court, take a lot of court sort of pressure, but they were never really in a hurry to get back that fast. And that was sort of something then from the coaching side, they were sort of saying to the guys, we need to really take advantage of this. We need to be up in their face. We need to be more aggressive. We need to show more energy here because, ultimately the US team had been through just as many games as we'd been through. So, and they went through some higher intensity mixed games earlier on. And the tournament, some really close games. So, yeah, we changed up our tactics in the second half because we were 12-0 down, made a couple of personnel changes. And really going in the second half, the team message was we cannot make a mistake. If we make a mistake, the game is over. And in fact, if the US were maybe slightly more mature in their tactical awareness, I think they would have won the game just from killing it, just from slowing it down, from making sure that we couldn't get a momentum or a foothold in the game. I don't think we could actually turn that lead around. But in fairness to the players who were on the court at the time, they didn't put a foot wrong, or in the one or two instances a mistake was made, somebody plucked something out that just spanned the game around. So that kind of went from a moment of, for me personally, for being really, really disappointed to then being massively proud in a way of, pulling ourselves together, managing to get the win against the US, who ultimately, for the size of player pool they can have, it is a massive achievement for Northern Ireland to be able to beat. So we were thrilled with that, and that was a positive note to end on. And I'm glad it worked out that way because, if we had have lost to the US in that game and sort of had it been 12-0 and continued on that way, it would have been tough to look at yourself in the mirror after it, but not because of their quality, that they were fantastic. And in fact, some of the catches and individual plays I seen in that US team was some of the best I've seen in dodgeball, full stop. A couple of amazing moments. But it was a fantastic way to finish the tournament off and at least come home with 2 bronze medals and knowing our women had made it as far further than they ever have.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how it looked from the outside, but absolutely, I was going in and out of the third place game, especially in the mixed, where I was up for a bit, and I was like, "What is going on?" And I didn't know who was playing in the beginning. I was like, "Okay, maybe your guys are broken after 3 games," which obviously sort of happened because it just has to happen after games of that caliber. But
Uh-huh.
still, we played the US before, and we were like, okay, they have amazing players and they have amazing individuals, but especially in the mix, they haven't found their rhythm and their their
The
cohesiveness
maturity,
yet.
yeah.
Exactly. So in the men's, it didn't show because they're just that good across the board. But with the different elements of the mix, they were more of a single player heavy team, but their single players are just absolutely incredible. So the catches, as you said, I haven't seen stuff like this before, except for maybe the US guys before, but that was really amazing. But I think that really is also like a testament to your character and like your will to win as well. Where you had a really really bad day for Northern Ireland perspective or standards, so you definitely expected more of this day, and still you beat one of the best team of the last 10 years. You beat them in a bronze medal match after lots of disappointment, and you came back against a really strong team from an almost unwinnable um, deficit. So absolute hats off to you. And I think everyone in the dodgeball community was quite happy for that to happen, because you said you were kind of the crowd favorites because you were always the underdogs, but I think there is more to that, and I think it's just the way you lose and you win is something that really is a great role model for the whole community, and the way you handle yourself on and off court is something lots of people aspire to, and I think that's more of the reason that you're crowd favorites. And I think those two games for bronze showcase that at the highest level, and is really a testament to that. And massive congratulations. I was really happy about both games. I mean, I would have really also enjoyed the US winning something because I think they sort of deserved, but not
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, not against you guys. To be fair, I'm a bit biased in that. But no, I think you summarized it quite well, and obviously that was a really really seriously difficult situation for you guys, and one you haven't been in a long time. And playing four games at that level, you have much deeper squad depth than before, but still, it's still a lot of heavy burden lies on a few really broad shoulders in case of Lee, but still, so that's just a tough day, and I think in the end you really managed to turn it around, even though it looked really bleak in the beginning, and can go away from that day with your head held high and fight another day. And I guess that's what's going to happen in the future. So just to sort of round this whole thing up, um, what are your like thoughts on the whole World Cup, except for the heat, and what's up next for you personally and for Northern Ireland? What can we expect?
Yeah, I think the World Cup wise, look, it's just every year, it tends to build and build. It's I suppose it goes out to all the organisers in Austria and sponsors and everyone who played a part in it, and the referees and the volunteers. It was easily the best tournament that we've ever been involved in. Just the sheer scale of it, the number of teams, the organisation that goes behind it. Um, Overall, I have a sour taste in my mouth. You'd be the same. You're a competitive
Absolutely.
guy, and overall, we really set ourselves the goal of gold, and that was ultimately probably a loss in our eyes. But watching it back, that's just that we didn't deserve to win as well. So it was kind of there was no excuses for it. That's just the way it goes. And unfortunately, that is the way sport is. So I'll always look back on the World Cup and think, boy, was I sweaty. And also, just the sheer scale, the sheer size. I was so proud to be involved in it and to come away with a medal. But in the back of my mind, I think I'll always wonder sort of what if in terms of NI, there'll be change. There'll be quite a lot of change actually. Just with various sort of players probably starting to look elsewhere. I know actually Lee's just had a family member, so he just had a young son. So shout out to him. But
Absolutely.
there will be
Congratulations.
Yeah, there will be quite a bit of change, and Sean is stepping away from management side. So, look, ultimately that gives a chance for someone to step up with fresh ideas as well, and to give an air of enthusiasm. Because to be honest, I sort of feel like we're almost at the end of a cycle in terms of that's been since COVID. We have not stopped. Like our goal was European Championships, double European Championships. And then we heard about the World Cup, and then I could go as NI, and we've said let's win the World Cup, and we have really, really given everything to get there. Fortunately, we've come up short. So now quite a lot of people are just in a short break, just to let ourselves get back into the flow of things. Club scene's starting up again here this weekend, actually, with our first tournament, and then international trainings will start up again, and it'll probably be a good chance even for potentially new coaches to step in, and just add a little bit more flavour. There's a couple of things I have up my sleeve that I'd like to pitch to the coaches when we get back, but I'll not share them just yet. but
Fair enough.
but inspired by you guys, and some of the other teams that we've seen at the World Cup. So, and I'll be back training hard again, with the goal of getting gold in Euros. And for me personally, I just seem to be bouncing between injuries at all times, as I'm sure every dodgeballer resonates with. So it's not just me, but I sort of feel I've got a bit of a hip issue. I sort of piece of cartilage is loose in the hip, which probably needs to be surgically repaired, and a couple other injuries, a bit of turf toe. So need to get myself right physically before I can really sort of commit to trying to be on that team. But that is my goal still, is to get to the Euros, to play potentially a last hurrah. I sort of, going into this, I'll be honest with you, I plan to hang up the boots in dodgeball. I plan to stop. I felt like I started in Austria, and finishing with a gold medal in Austria would have been the fairy tale ending. But unfortunately, this fairy tale continues on.
There's still some chapters left, and I think the dodgeball world is happy about that. I am.
Hopefully.
I am.
Well, thank you.
No, I think that sums it up quite nicely. I mean, yeah, I think Northern Ireland and Austria, I think of those teams pretty much that they're pretty much in the same spot. We have a much tinier club scene. We're much smaller countries. Obviously, you are even a little bit smaller, but you came before, sort of. And the last years, just effort wise, you just outdid us and took everything to the next level, but also pushed us again to show us that it's possible to beat England, who is always like that big dragon on the hill, where there is just the player pool is incredible and the level of competition. And yeah, they're still England, so we're always gonna try to beat
and they
them.
will
And
be
the thing
back.
is, absolutely, they're gonna be back because they have lost too much in the last years. I think for their liking, and I think at some point they're not gonna endure that anymore. But on the other side, I think it's also a really great example for smaller nations and for scenes that just start out, that they know you can do a lot with just effort, will, and if you work together as a team. And I think that's a really big message to show that, like, you guys beat England, we beat the US, and it's always tough, and it's always gonna get a little more tough the next year around. But still, I think that's an amazing thing that you can still fight for those goals even though you're such a tiny nation. And in dodgeball, it also has its benefits. Like, dodgeball is such a tactical and such a complex game that team play and knowing your players, knowing your whole team on a personal level, and just being in sync with them gives you such an edge that it can outweigh other strengths and other, like, almost unovercomable obstacles, where I feel like, how can we beat those guys? And I always feel like, or the last 3 years, I always felt like we maybe have the best, which is obviously like, if you break it down, not completely true, but I thought we had like maybe the best three guys. You probably had the best six guys, and England has the best 20 guys. And that's how I always thought about it and how I developed the game as well. And we really tried to not lose our edge, but also like deepen our squad depth. And you guys are doing the same. And I think it really showed this World Championships that there are lots of new faces which gonna be ready and
Yeah,
licking their lips because they know they come into a really strong team. They have a lot of history. They are now winners and they have to step up. And I think the same is for us as well. So I think for
definitely.
young players, there's a lot of potential and a lot of burden as well to really give it their all. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen.
Definitely.
And
I
I think
wanted to
that's a
mention as
really
well,
yeah
just on your point about training together and NI strength being that we can train all the time together and we can form great friendships. I was amazed listening to Nate. If you haven't listened to the first podcast episode, people please go back and give it a listen because it's a really good discussion between them. And Nate sort of touches upon that there was only one training session they had before they came over, which is just incredible. Like those guys, they looked like a unit. So imagine if you give them, a full year of, as you said, double week training sessions. You're training twice a week together. They could be unstoppable. So that's hats off to those guys and just shows how strong individually they are.
Yeah, so we have a lot of individual improvements. I think that's what I got from this World Championships as well. Like with the US guys, with the Australian guys, there was so much different dodgeball as well, and there are so many skills that we haven't focused on that much. And I think for the next World Cup in 2 years, the team that's gonna integrate both sides has the individual skill and also the tactics is gonna win, and otherwise you're gonna be out of there. And I think if you want to compete at the top level in 2 years, you've got a lot of work to do. Every one of us has a lot of work to do. And let's see who will still be there. I don't know if it's going to be any one of us, but I think the future of dodgeball is going to look really athletic and really amazing. And yeah, I think that's a great ending for maybe the first part. And to everyone who has made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Josh. This is the first part of 2, so be sure to check the second one out when it hits. And until next time, keep throwing those balls, try not to get caught, and take care, everybody.